Yeah, I still feel like shit, so I didn't go to work today. But it's good to know. And yes, my dog is eating in the background. But it's good to know that there's some good news in the world, even though this man eluded justice for so damn long. And of course, I'm referring to the reported death of maybe in the last hour. This is about 11:36 Pacific time. So it was around 11 a.m. when it was reported that Robert Durst, the multimillionaire serial killer, died in prison at the age of 78. He was born in 1943 to a prominent real estate family. And frankly, his surviving family members were scared to death of him. So they were glad he was finally off the street. And even though he'd been paid off years prior. But anyway, as we know, he was convicted only in September for the 2000 death of his close friend Susan Berman, who he met in, I think, UCLA when he was a student there many, many years ago. And he had gotten away with murder prior to that, and we've talked about it. I've talked about it on my blog. I've talked about it on an early video. But he got away with the murder and dismemberment of Morris Black back in, I think it was 2001 or 2. Let's figure out Morris Black. When did he murder him? Because we know he killed him. Because he always admitted he killed. Because I think that was after Berman. No, he was killed in 2000. And let's see. And then, but he was acquitted. Well, no. No, it was on 2001. Yeah. So this was actually, he caused his first wife to disappear, Kathy Durst, as we know, because he was so furious that she was going to have a life separate from him. She was studying to be a pediatrician, and he was not happy about that. He was so cheap with a buck that he cut her off, virtually entirely cut her off. Plus, he abused her. But one time, after a party or a get-together, she disappeared, and she was never seen again. And just recently, Durst was charged with her disappearance, but of course he died before he could ever be brought to justice on that. But let's see, it was 2001, yeah. So Morris Black was the last known victim of Robert Durst, and this was when he was going around cross-dressing and calling himself a woman's name of a woman he went to school with, and she was shocked when her name was being used because she had never even been to Galveston, Texas. So he did this cross-dressing crap and lived in this dilapidated boarding house or rooming house or whatever it was, and he got into an altercation with this neighbor, Morris Black. And whether it was self-defense or whether it was intentional, it can't be known for sure, but it is clear he killed Black, and then he cut him all up and threw his remains in Galveston Bay. Now, he was charged with that killing, but the jury could not convict him. And the reason they could not convict him was because they only had two things they could do. Thanks to the defense, the clever defense, they could only convict him of first-degree murder, or they had to acquit him. There was not second-degree murder, there was not manslaughter, there was not negligent homicide, there wasn't any of that. It was murder one or nothing. And so since they did not have the head of Morris Black to determine whether or not it was premeditated or whether it was a self-defense, they couldn't convict. It wasn't because it wasn't a jury like with that T. Cullen Davis where they were enamored with him because he was rich and rich men couldn't possibly kill anybody. It wasn't a case here. It was a case where the jury felt he was guilty, but they only could make two decisions. So Durst walked on that one. And then eventually he was charged with the death of Susan Berman, and that was mostly because of the documentary called The Jinx, which I have on DVD since I don't have HBO, and it's a very good documentary, and that's where he basically admitted he killed all three of them. And that plus some handwriting evidence nailed him on Susan Berman's murder. And she was killed execution style in 2000. So he was serving life without parole. He had just been sentenced. And of course, I knew, and everybody knew, but you could tell by looking at Durst, that he wasn't long for this life at that point, because he had cancer, he had esophageal cancer, he had bladder cancer, he had COPD, he had a whole bunch of damn health issues. And he had COVID recently. So he was a mess. And so he met his maker this morning. And so we'll never, ever know what happened to Kathy Durst. That's the sad thing about it. We'll probably never know. Her remains will probably never be found. But everything points to him as having killed her. And there's been rumors about him having killed other people. But those are the three that are dead, were, no pun intended, were dead certain, were the victims of Robert Durst. So it was good that he finally croaked. So he couldn't cheat death. He cheated justice for a long time, but in the end he couldn't cheat death. And anyway, that's all for that. I thought this is an obit that I would put in. I thought about doing an obit for other people that had recently died, but now this one I thought merited some mention. So anyway, yes, once again, the good die young, and the bad ones live longer than they should.